The auctioneer called her Lot 7, right after the plow horse and before the water rights. August heat pressed down on Saguaro Flats like a hand holding something underwater. The auction yard smelled of cattle sweat and cigar smoke, and the crowd stood in loose clusters, fanning themselves with their hats, waiting for something worth bidding on. She stood on the wooden platform in a cotton dress torn at the shoulder, no shoes, dust caked to her ankles. Her hair had come loose from its pins and hung in dark ropes against her neck. The auctioneer read from a paper. Labor contract, transferable, 3-year term or until debt is satisfied. Starting bid, $200. Someone laughed. Someone else spat tobacco juice into the dirt. She didn't move, didn't beg, didn't look at any of them. A man in a sweat-stained shirt raised 2 fingers. 200. 220, called another. The bidding crawled upward, the sun crawled higher. She stood like something carved from salt, white and still and waiting to dissolve. 350. Do I hear 360? Silence, then boots on hard-packed earth. A man walking forward, not raising his hand, just walking until he stood at the base of the platform, and the crowd went quiet around him. He didn't look at the auctioneer, he looked at her. She stays with me. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Sir, you'll need to set. I'll sign whatever you got. She stays with me. He signed the paper without checking the amount, pulled bills from his wallet and handed them over like they meant nothing. She stepped down from the block. Her bare feet hit the dirt, and she felt the heat of it through her soles, and she still didn't look at him. Didn't thank him, didn't know yet whether she should. The truck smelled like cattle and motor oil, and neither of them said a word for the first 30 miles. Ruth pressed herself against the passenger door, as far from him as the bench seat allowed. The window was down, hot wind whipping her hair across her face, but she didn't push it back. Didn't want to move. Didn't want to remind him she was there. He drove with one hand on the wheel, eyes fixed on the road. A working man's hands, scarred knuckles, calluses thick as hide. He wasn't young. Lines around his eyes, gray threading through his hair at the temples. 40, maybe? 45. The town fell away behind them. First the buildings, then the fences, then even the telephone poles. Just scrubland and saguaro and heat shimmer rising off the blacktop. You hungry? His voice startled her. Low, rough, like he didn't use it much. She didn't answer. He didn't ask again. 20 more miles of nothing. The road turned to dirt, and the truck rattled over washboard ruts, and she gripped the door handle to keep from sliding on the seat. Where you taking me? She hadn't meant to speak. The words just came out, sharp and flat. Home. Whose home? Mine. He glanced at her, then back at the road. For now, for now. She turned that over in her mind. Didn't know if it was a threat or a promise or just the truth. Maybe all three. The ranch appeared through the dust like something rising from the dead. Adobe walls gone gold in the late afternoon light, a wooden porch facing west, a windmill turning slow against the sky, its blades catching sun. He pulled the truck up beside a barn that had once been red and was now the color of dried blood. Cut the engine. The silence was sudden and enormous. A man emerged from the barn, younger, dark-haired, Mexican by the look of him. He stopped when he saw Ruth, his face going careful and still. Tomas. The driver climbed out. This is Ruth. She's gonna be staying a while. Tomas nodded slowly. Boss. He looked at Ruth, and there was something in his eyes that wasn't judgment. Curiosity, maybe. Or recognition. Ma'am. She didn't correct him, didn't say she wasn't anyone's ma'am. Just climbed out of the truck and stood in the dirt and waited to be told what came next. The driver, she still didn't know his name, led her toward the house. The porch boards creaked under their weight. Inside, the air was cooler, thick with shadows. A single room served as kitchen and sitting area. A hallway led to doors she couldn't see beyond. Jack? Tomas's voice from outside. You need anything? We're fine. Jack, so that was his name. He showed her to a room at the end of the hall. Small, clean, a narrow bed with a wool blanket despite the heat, a wash basin on a stand, a window facing the mountains, the glass wavy with age. Door don't lock from outside. He stood in the doorway, not entering. Only from in. You want to lock it? You lock it. She looked at the door, looked at the lock. A simple bolt, brass worn smooth. I ain't asking for nothing, she said. Didn't say you were. He left. His boots on the wooden floor, then the creak of the porch, then silence. She sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress was thin, but clean. Someone had put a pitcher of water on the stand, and a glass, and a folded towel that smelled like lye soap. She didn't cry, hadn't cried in longer than she could remember. Instead, she opened her bag, the one small bag they'd let her keep, and unpacked what was left of her life. A change of clothes, worn soft from washing, a hairbrush with a cracked handle, a photograph of her mother, creased down the middle. And at the bottom, wrapped in a scrap of cloth, a rectangle of paper, charred at one edge. She held it in her palm. Didn't look at it for long. Greyhound lines. One way. Albuquerque. She'd bought it 14 months ago. Could have climbed on that bus and left her husband and his debts and his empty promises behind. Could have started over. Instead, she'd burned it. Held it over the stove flame and watched it curl and char and told herself she was doing the right thing. Staying, trying. The right thing had landed her on an auction block in Saguaro Flats. She put the ticket fragment under the mattress. Didn't know why she'd kept it. Punishment, maybe. Proof that she'd had a choice once, and she'd chosen wrong. Outside, the sun was setting. Orange light spilled through the wavy glass, painting the wall in shades of far. Jack sat on the porch with a cup of coffee gone cold. The windmill creaked in the distance, a sound he'd heard 10,000 times, a sound that still made his chest tight. Tomas came and sat beside him. Didn't say anything for a while. Just sat. You gonna tell me what that was about? No. Fair enough. Tomas took off his hat, ran a hand through his hair. She looks like she's been through hell. Probably has. You okay, boss? The windmill turned. Creak, creak, creak. Jack stared at his hands. The hands that had signed that paper. The hands that had handed over money he couldn't really spare for a woman he didn't know. I don't know, he said. And for the first time in 8 years, it was the truth. Ellie Hargrove took one look at Ruth and said, You drink coffee, or are you just going to stand there looking lost? The kitchen was bright with morning sun, and the old woman stood at the stove with a cast-iron skillet in one hand and a wooden spoon in the other. She was small and wiry, her white hair pulled back tight, her face a map of desert years. She didn't smile. Didn't frown either, just looked at Ruth like she was measuring her for something. I can work. Ruth stood in the doorway, uncertain whether to enter. I don't need... I asked if you drink coffee. Yes or no? Yes. Good. Sit. Ruth sat. The chair was wooden, worn smooth by decades of use. The table was set for two, a plate and cup at one end, another plate and cup across from it, but Ellie didn't sit. She poured coffee into a tin cup and set it in front of Ruth, then went back to the stove. Eggs will be ready in a minute. You eat eggs? Yes, ma'am. Don't ma'am me. Makes me feel old. Ellie cracked 2 eggs into the skillet. Name's Ellie. I'm Jack's mother. I live in the cottage out back. This here's my kitchen, but that's my son's house. So I suppose you're his guest, not mine. Ruth wrapped her hands around the coffee cup. The heat felt good despite the warmth already building outside. I'm Ruth. I know who you are. Ellie didn't turn around. Whole town knows who you are by now. Crenshaw's been running his mouth since yesterday. Ruth's stomach tightened. What's he saying? Nothing worth repeating. Ellie slid the eggs onto a plate, added a biscuit from a cloth-covered basket, and set it in front of Ruth. Eat. You look like you ain't had a real meal in a week. It had been longer than that. Ruth picked up the fork. Ellie poured herself coffee and leaned against the counter, watching. Not staring, just watching, the way you'd watch weather rolling in from the mountains. That other place. Ruth gestured with her fork toward the empty setting. Somebody coming to breakfast? Ellie's face went still, just for a moment, like a cloud passing over the sun. That's Henry's spot. Don't ask. Ruth didn't ask. She ate her eggs and didn't ask, and the silence stretched between them like something with weight. By mid-morning, Ruth had learned that she knew nothing useful about ranches. Jack had assigned her simple tasks, feeding the chickens, collecting eggs, sweeping the porch. She'd burned through the sweeping in 10 minutes and felt like an idiot standing there with a broom and nothing else to do. The chickens were worse. She'd never been around chickens before. They were louder than she'd expected, and meaner, and the rooster in particular seemed to have taken a personal dislike to her. When she tried to scatter feed, he puffed up his feathers and charged. She ran. Actually ran, the feed bucket clanging against her leg, until she hit the fence and nearly went over it. Laughter behind her. She spun around. Tomas was leaning against the barn door, hat pushed back, grinning like he'd just seen the funniest thing in his life. City girl? Louisiana. She was breathing hard, her face hot with embarrassment. We had swamps, not chickens. Swamps got gators. Gators don't chase you into a fence? He laughed again. A good laugh, warm and unguarded. Fair enough. Here. He walked over, took the bucket from her, and scattered feed with a practiced motion. The rooster strutted but didn't charge. You gotta show him you ain't scared. I am scared. Yeah, but you don't show him that. He handed the bucket back. Fake it. Works on most things in life. She almost smiled, caught herself before it fully formed. You been working here long? 12 years. He pulled a bandana from his pocket, wiped his forehead. Since I was 22. Jack took me on when nobody else would. Why wouldn't they? Brown skin, no papers back then. He shrugged. Jack didn't ask about papers, just asked if I could work. Ruth looked toward the house. She could see Jack in the distance, mending fence near the cattle pen, his back bent to the labor. What kind of man is he? Tomas followed her gaze. Quiet, fair, pays on time. A pause. Sad, mostly, but he don't let it stop him from doing right. She didn't know what to do with that. Didn't know what to do with any of this. The ranch, the work, the people who fed her and gave her a room with a door that locked from the inside. The rooster's name is General, Tomas said. What? The rooster. We call him General 'cause he thinks he's in charge. Tomas grinned. He ain't, but don't tell him that. This time she did smile, small and quick, gone almost before it arrived. But Tomas saw it, and something in his face softened, like he'd been waiting for exactly that. Evening came slow, the way it does in desert country, the sun taking its time bleeding out across the mountains, turning the sky from blue to gold to something close to bruised. Ruth sat on the porch, she hadn't meant to, had finished her chores, such as they were, and found herself drifting toward the wooden chairs like a dog, circling before it lies down. The chair creaked under her weight. Old wood, good wood, the kind that held. She watched the colors change and tried not to think. Boots on the floorboards behind her. She stood up fast, the chair scraping back. Jack stopped in the doorway. He had a glass of water in his hand, and he looked at her standing there, tense as wire, and something moved across his face that might have been sadness. You don't have to stand when I come out. She hadn't realized she'd done it. Conditioned response. Years of learning when to move, when to make herself smaller. She forced her shoulders down. Habit. He nodded like he understood. Set the water glass on the porch railing, not handing it to her, just leaving it there for her to take if she wanted. She took it, drank. The water was cool, pulled fresh from the well. Thank you. Don't mention it. Silence. The windmill turned in the distance, its creak carrying across the flat land. A hawk circled somewhere to the east, riding thermals. What did you pay for me? The question came out harder than she'd meant. She watched his face, looking for she didn't know what. Anger, calculation, the mask slipping. Don't matter. It matters to me. He leaned against the porch post, arms crossed, looked out at the land instead of at her. Enough that Crenshaw won't come looking for a while. And she processed that. Crenshaw. The man who'd held her husband's debts, who'd decided a widow's labor was worth more than her dignity. The man who'd put her on that block. I'll pay you back, somehow. I don't expect nothing. That's what scares me. The words hung between them. He turned his head, finally looked at her straight on. His eyes were the color of creek water in winter, gray and deep and hard to read. I ain't gonna hurt you. His voice was low, rough at the edges. I ain't gonna touch you. I ain't gonna ask you for anything you don't want to give. You're here 'cause Crenshaw had no right to sell a person like livestock, and somebody had to say so. Why you? 'Cause nobody else did. Simple. Flat, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Ruth looked down at the glass in her hands. The water was almost gone. She could see her own reflection in what remained, distorted, dark, a stranger's face. I don't understand you. That makes two of us. He pushed off from the post, headed back inside. Stopped at the door. Supper's in an hour. Ellie's making stew. You're welcome at the table. I'll eat in my room. Suit yourself. He didn't argue, didn't push. Just nodded and went inside, and she was alone again, with the sunset and the silence. She ate in her room that night. And the next. Sat on the edge of the bed, with a bowl of stew and bread that Ellie left outside her door without comment. But on the third night, she found herself standing in the doorway of the kitchen, watching. Ellie was setting this table. Two places, like always. Henry's spot across from hers, the plate and cup arranged with the precision of ritual. Ellie's hands moved automatically, like she'd done this 10,000 times and would do it 10,000 more. Ruth watched, and something twisted in her chest. You gonna stand there all night? Ellie hadn't turned around. Hadn't needed to. I didn't want to interrupt. You ain't interrupting nothing. Stew's on the stove. Bowls are in the cabinet. Ellie sat down in her chair, picked up her spoon. You want to eat alone? Eat alone? You want to sit? Sit. Ruth hesitated. 3 days of silence. 3 days of waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the kindness to curdle into something else. But Ellie just ate her stew, not looking up, not waiting, like it didn't matter either way. Ruth got a bowl, filled it, sat down across from Ellie, in the chair that wasn't Henry's, the one with no place setting. Ellie glanced up, just once. Something flickered in her eyes, not quite a smile, but close. She reached over to the counter without standing, grabbed a plate and cup, and set them in front of Ruth. 3 places now. Salt's on your left, Ellie said. Don't be stingy with it. Stew needs salt. Ruth picked up her spoon. And for the first time, in longer than she could remember, she ate a meal at a table with another person, in the light, where she could be seen. She found him at the windmill, talking to no one, or maybe to someone who couldn't answer anymore. Ruth hadn't meant to follow him. She'd woken early, before the sun cleared the mountains, and seen his silhouette crossing the flatland toward the water tank. Something in the way he walked, slow, heavy, like a man going to church or a grave, made her pull on her boots and slip out the back door. She kept her distance, stayed behind the equipment shed, then the cattle pen, then a stand of mesquite that gave her cover without blocking her view. He stood at the base of the windmill, one hand on the wooden frame. The blades turned slow above him, catching the first pink light of dawn. He was speaking. She could see his lips move, but the wind carried his words away before they reached her. She watched him for a long time, watched his shoulders rise and fall, watched him bow his head like he was praying or apologizing or both. Then a board creaked under her foot. He turned, saw her, and his face, which had been open and raw, closed like a door slamming shut. "What do you need?" His voice was flat, not angry, worse, empty. "Nothing. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "It's fine." It wasn't fine. She could see that. But he was already walking past her, back toward the house, and she stood there, in the mesquite shadow, feeling like she'd stolen something that wasn't hers to take. She didn't mention it, not that day, not the next. But she watched him differently now, noticed how he avoided the windmill when others were around, how his eyes would drift toward it sometimes when he thought no one was looking. He was haunted. She knew haunted, knew the shape of it, the weight. She just didn't know by what. 4 days after the windmill, Ruth was in the kitchen with Ellie, drying dishes while the old woman washed. They'd fallen into a rhythm. Ellie cooked, Ruth cleaned, neither of them talked much. It was comfortable, safe. But today, Ellie broke the silence. "You're still sleeping with that chair against the door." Ruth nearly dropped the plate. "How do you—" "Floorboards creak. I hear you drag it every night." Ellie didn't look up from the sink. "I ain't judging, just noticing." Ruth set the plate down carefully. "Old habit." Ellie rinsed a pot, handed it over. "Jack used to sleep with a rifle under his bed. First year after Sarah." The name landed like a stone in still water. "Sarah?" "His wife." Ellie's hands kept moving, steady and sure. "She died having his baby. Baby died too, 8 years ago now." Ruth stood very still. The pot dripped water onto the floor, but she didn't move to dry it. "I didn't know." "Ain't something he talks about. Ain't something any of us talk about, really." Ellie finally looked at her, those sharp old eyes seeing too much. "But you're living in her house. Sleeping down the hall from where it happened. Figured you ought to know." Ruth thought about the spare room, the clean sheets, the window facing the mountains. Was my room? No, that was the guest room even then. Sarah and Jack's room is the one at the other end. He still sleeps there. Ellie took the pot back, dried it herself. Some men leave. Some men stay and punish themselves. Jack's the second kind. Ruth thought about the windmill, the way he'd stood there, talking to empty air. "He talks to her, at the windmill." Ellie nodded slowly. "That's where he proposed. Stupid boy, down on one knee in the dirt, windmill creaking like a rusty gate." A ghost of a smile. She said yes anyway. "Did you—" Ruth hesitated. "Did you like her?" "Loved her. Simple. No sentiment, no softness, just fact. Loved her like she was my own. And then she was gone. And the baby was gone. And Jack." Ellie shook her head. "Jack stopped being Jack for a long time." Ruth dried her hands on her apron. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, closer. "Why'd he bring me here?" Ellie met her eyes. "Maybe you should ask him, or maybe you already know." The next morning, Jack asked if she wanted to help mend fence. It wasn't really a question, more like an offering, something to do with her hands, her time, her restless energy. She said yes, before she could think of a reason not to. They rode out in the truck, tools rattling in the bed, neither of them speaking. The land stretched flat and brown in every direction, broken only by the dark shapes of cattle and the occasional saguaro standing like a sentinel. He parked near a section of fence that had come down, posts leaning, wire sagging into the dirt. They worked in silence at first, him digging out the old posts while she held the new ones steady. The sun climbed. Sweat ran down her back. "Hand me that hammer?" She passed it over. Their fingers brushed. She pulled back too fast, and he noticed, and neither of them mentioned it. "You ever done this before?" he asked. "First time for everything." "You're not bad at it." Don't sound so surprised." Almost a smile from him. She'd seen him smile exactly once before, at something Tomas said, and it had transformed his face, made him look younger, lighter. This one was smaller, barely there, but she saw it. They worked through the morning. The rhythm of it was good. Lift, hold, hammer, move. Her shoulders ached. Her hands would blister. She didn't care. Where'd you come from? His voice was casual, like he was asking about the weather. Before. Ruth drove a nail into wood. Focused on that. Louisiana, long time ago. That where the accent comes from? When you're tired, you sound different. She hadn't known he'd noticed. Hadn't known she still slipped. I learned to hide it. People out here hear Cajun. They think. She stopped. Shook her head. Don't matter what they think. I don't think anything. He set another post, tamped the dirt around it, just noticed. Silence. The wind moved through the scrub, carrying the smell of dust and sage. My husband was from here, she said. The words came out before she could stop them. Arizona, I mean. Tucson. That's how I ended up west. Jack waited, didn't push. He was a good talker, charming. Made you feel like you were the only person in the room. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Turns out that's a useful skill when you're running from debts in 3 states. He, the one who left you with Crenshaw's paper? He didn't leave me, he died. She wiped her forehead with her sleeve. Car accident, 6 months ago. And then I found out about the money he owed, and the people he owed it to, and she stopped. Her throat was tight. That's enough for today. Jack nodded. Fair enough. He didn't press. Didn't offer sympathy or ask stupid questions. Just handed her the canteen and let her drink in peace. She thought about what Ellie had said. Maybe you already know. Maybe she did. That night, the heat broke. Not much, just enough to make the air breathable, to let the sweat dry instead of pool. Ruth sat on the porch after supper, watching lightning flicker on the horizon. Too far away for thunder, just light, silent, and strange. Jack came out with 2 cups of coffee, handed her one without asking if she wanted it. Storm's coming, he said. Couple days, maybe. Monsoon? Probably. They hit hard when they hit. He sat in the other chair, leaving space between them. You'll want to stay inside when it breaks. Flash floods come up fast in the washes. She sipped the coffee. It was strong and bitter, the way Ellie made it. Jack. He looked at her. I saw you, at the windmill, talking to... She stopped, started again. Ellie told me about Sarah, about what happened. His face didn't change, but something behind his eyes shifted, like a door opening onto a dark room. She shouldn't have. I asked. Still, he looked out at the lightning. That's my business, not hers to tell. She thought I should know, since I'm living in your house. He was quiet for a long time. The lightning flashed. The windmill creaked. I go out there sometimes, he said finally. When it gets bad, when I can't. He shook his head. I don't know why I'm telling you this. Because I asked. Nobody asks. She set her coffee down, turned to face him fully. What do you say to her when you're out there? His jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. I tell her I'm sorry. His voice was rough, scraped raw. I tell her I should have been there. I tell her I'm still trying to figure out how to live with it. Do you figure it out? No. He looked at her then. Really looked, the way he had at the auction, like he was seeing something beyond her face. But I keep trying. That's all any of us can do, I guess. The lightning flickered again, closer now. Ruth picked up her coffee, drank. I talk to my mother sometimes, she said quietly. She's been dead 11 years. I still tell her things. Stupid things, what I ate for breakfast, what the weather's like. Makes me feel less alone. Jack nodded slowly. Yeah, that's it exactly. They sat in silence after that, not uncomfortable. Just 2 people who understood something about each other that didn't need more words. The lightning moved across the sky like a pulse, like a heartbeat, like something trying to break through. Dale Crenshaw's Cadillac pulled up to the ranch like a cream-colored coffin on wheels. Ruth saw it first. She was on the porch, mending a shirt that had torn at the seam. Ellie had taught her the stitch 2 days ago, when the dust cloud appeared on the road. The car emerged from it like something out of a fever dream, too clean and too bright for this land of dirt and sweat. Her hands stopped moving. The needle hung in the air. Jack came around the side of the house, wire cutters in his hand. He saw the Cadillac. His face went flat. Get inside. Jack, inside, now. She didn't move. Couldn't. Her legs had turned to stone. And the old fear was back. The fear she'd thought she'd buried. The fear that had lived in her chest for 6 months while creditors circled and lawyers spoke in words she didn't understand. The Cadillac stopped. The engine cut. The driver's door opened, and Dale Crenshaw stepped out like a man arriving at a church social. He was tall and soft in the middle, wearing a cream-colored suit that matched his car. His hair was silver, slicked back with oil. He smiled the way a banker smiles when he's about to foreclose on your house. All teeth, no warmth. Jack. He spread his hands wide. Beautiful day, isn't it? What do you want, Dale? Now, is that any way to greet an old friend? Crenshaw walked toward the porch, slow and easy, like he had all the time in the world. His eyes found Ruth, lingered. Ma'am, you're looking better than the last time I saw you. Ruth said nothing. Her fingers had gone white around the needle. State your business, Jack said. Then get off my land. Crenshaw's smile didn't waver. Straight to the point. I always appreciated that about you, Jack. No games. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded paper. There's been a miscalculation. Interest accrued. The debt wasn't fully satisfied. Jack didn't take the paper. You said it was clear. Paperwork, friend. These things happen. Numbers get transposed. Dates get missed. Crenshaw shrugged. She owes another $300. You can pay it now, or I take her back to settle the difference. When the air went still, even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Ruth stood up. The shirt fell from her lap. I'll go. No. Jack's voice was iron. It's my debt, my problem. She was surprised by how steady her voice was, how calm. The fear was still there, but something else was rising over it, something harder, sharper. I won't let you pay more for me. Crenshaw's smile widened. See, she understands. Reasonable woman. She ain't going anywhere. Jack stepped between them, his body a wall. I'll bring the money to town. Tomorrow. I'd prefer today. Tomorrow. They stared at each other. Two men, two wills. The Cadillac gleamed in the sun like a taunt. Finally, Crenshaw nodded. Tomorrow then, noon, my office. He tipped an imaginary hat toward Ruth. Ma'am. He got back in his car. The engine started. The cream-colored coffin rolled away, trailing dust. Jack didn't move until it disappeared over the rise. You shouldn't have done that, Ruth found her voice as soon as they were inside. The words came out hot, trembling with something she couldn't name. Done what? Told him no? Told him you'd pay more. $300, Jack. You don't have that kind of money just lying around. I'll figure it out. How? Sell another cow? Mortgage the land? She was pacing now, her hands balled into fists. This is my mess. Mine. You don't get to keep cleaning it up. I'm not cleaning anything up. What? She spun to face him. What are you doing? 'Cause I've been here 3 weeks and I still don't understand. You don't want anything from me. You don't ask anything. You just keep... Her voice cracked. You keep being kind, and I don't know what to do with it. Jack stood very still. His face was unreadable. Why do you keep doing this? She demanded. What do you want from me? I don't want anything. Everybody wants something. The words echoed in the small room. Ruth was shaking now. Years of transactions and debts, and men who always wanted something, rising up in her throat like bile. My husband wanted a pretty wife who didn't ask questions. Crenshaw wants his money. The men at that auction wanted... She couldn't finish, couldn't say it. Everybody wants something, Jack. So, what is it? What's the price? He didn't answer. Just looked at her with those Winter Creek eyes, and she hated him for it. Hated his patience, his silence, his goddamn kindness that she couldn't understand or repay or escape. Tell me, her voice broke. Tell me what you want so I can stop waiting for it. Silence. Then quietly, I don't know. She stared at him. I don't know what I want, he said. I haven't known for 8 years. But when I saw you up on that block, something in me, he stopped, shook his head. I couldn't just stand there. I couldn't watch it happen and do nothing. Not again. Not again. The words hung between them like smoke. What do you mean, like, not again? His jaw tightened. He looked away. Jack, what do you mean? Forget it. No. She stepped toward him. You don't get to say something like that and then shut down? What do you mean, not again? He was silent for a long moment. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, a horse whinnied. Sarah, he said finally, I wasn't there when she needed me. I was in town, settling a bill. A stupid bill, $40, could have waited. And when I got back, she was already... His voice splintered. I couldn't do anything. I just stood there. I just watched her die. Ruth felt the anger drain out of her like water from a cracked vessel. So when I saw you, he continued, standing up there, holding your head up, even though everything was falling apart. He finally looked at her. I thought, maybe this time I could do something. Maybe I could be there. And she understood then. The kindness wasn't kindness at all. Or it was, but it was also penance, atonement. He wasn't saving her. He was trying to save himself. And somehow, that made it worse. So I'm what? Her voice was barely a whisper. Your second chance? Your do-over? No. That's not... Did you even see me? At the auction? Or did you just see her? He flinched like she'd struck him. I saw you. Did you? She reached into her pocket. Her fingers found the scrap of paper she'd carried for 14 months. The charred edge, the faded ink. She pulled it out and threw it at him. You want to know why I was up on that block? Why I owed those debts? The ticket fragment landed on the floor between them. He looked down at it, looked back at her. Because I stayed. Her voice was raw now, stripped of everything but truth. I had this, a year before he died. A ticket to Albuquerque, my cousin's place. I could have walked away, could have left him and his debts and his lies and started over. Why didn't you? Because I thought I could fix him. Because I was stupid. Because I believed him when he said things would get better. She laughed, harsh, bitter, broken. Because I burned it. Held it over the stove and watched it turn to ash and told myself I was doing the right thing. She sank onto the nearest chair. All the fight had gone out of her. I chose to stay. I chose wrong. And now I'm here. And you're paying for my mistakes, and I don't— Her breath hitched. I don't know how to let you. Jack bent down, picked up the ticket fragment, looked at it for a long time. The charred edge, the word Albuquerque still visible beneath the scorch marks. He walked over to her, held it out. Keep it. She looked up at him. Keep it, he said again. Reminds you that you can leave. Anytime you want. Doors open. Always has been. She took the ticket. Her fingers trembled. What if I don't want to leave? He didn't answer, just turned and walked out, the screen door banging shut behind him. Outside, the wind had picked up. The windmill creaked, loud, insistent, almost mournful. Ruth sat alone in the empty room, the ticket in her hand, and wondered which of them was more broken. She found his wife's dress in the closet the day everything fell apart. It had been 3 days since Crenshaw's visit, 3 days since the fight. Jack had ridden into town the next morning, come back without speaking, and the matter of the money had been settled in silence. Ruth didn't ask where he found $300, didn't want to know what he'd sold, what he'd borrowed, what piece of himself he'd traded away. They moved around each other like ghosts, polite, careful, never quite touching. The fragile thing between them had cracked, and neither knew how to mend it. Ellie noticed. Of course she noticed, but she didn't say anything, just watched them with those sharp old eyes and kept setting 3 places at the table. On the 3rd day, Ruth decided to clean. It wasn't planned. She woke before dawn with her skin too tight and her thoughts too loud, and she needed to do something with her hands. The kitchen was already spotless, Ellie's territory, so she started on the main room, then the hallway, then found herself standing outside Jack's bedroom door. He'd ridden out early. Cattle needed moving to the east pasture. He wouldn't be back until dark. She told herself she was just dusting, just cleaning, just earning her keep. The door swung open on silent hinges. The room was sparse, a bed, neatly made, a dresser with a lamp and a Bible. A window facing east, the curtains sun-faded. It smelled like him, leather and dust, and something underneath that might have been loneliness. She dusted the dresser, wiped down the windowsill, swept the floor, then she opened the closet. His clothes hung in a neat row, work shirts, 2 good shirts, a jacket for church, boots lined up on the floor, a hat on the shelf above, and in the corner, separate from everything else, a dress, blue cotton, simple cut, a woman's dress, carefully hung, untouched by time or dust. Someone had wrapped it in thin paper, then unwrapped it again. The paper lay crumpled at the bottom of the closet, as if someone took the dress out sometimes. Just to look at it, Ruth's hand moved, without her permission. She touched the fabric, soft, worn soft from washing, from wearing, from being loved. She held it up against herself. It was her size, her coloring, her— The realization hit like a fist to the chest. She stumbled back, the dress falling from her hands, puddling on the floor like a shed skin. That's why he looked at me that way at the auction, not at her, at a ghost, at a memory wrapped in familiar shape. She backed out of the room, left the dress where it fell, closed the door, and leaned against it, her heart hammering, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Everything she'd thought she understood, the kindness, the patience, the way he'd said she stays with me, all of it reshuffled in her mind like cards being cut for a new deal. He hadn't seen Ruth Delacroix standing on that auction block. He'd seen Sarah. She didn't eat dinner that night, told Ellie she wasn't feeling well, not a lie. Exactly, and stayed in her room until the house went dark and quiet. Then she waited. Jack's boots on the porch, the creak of the front door, his footsteps down the hall. Pausing outside her door for a moment, she held her breath, then continuing to his own room. She heard him open his closet. She heard him go still. A long silence, then the closet closing, his bed creaking as he sat down. Ruth pressed her hands flat against the mattress to stop them from shaking. Morning came gray and heavy, clouds piling up over the mountains like a bruise spreading across skin. The air had that thick, electric feel that meant rain was coming, not the gentle kind, but the violent summer storms that turned dry washes into rivers and tore roofs off barns. Ruth found Jack on the porch. He was sitting in his usual chair, but he wasn't looking at the land. He was looking at his hands. "We need to talk." He didn't startle, didn't look up. "Yeah, I reckon we do." She sat down across from him, left space between them. The porch felt smaller than it ever had, the chairs too close despite the distance. "I found the dress." His jaw tightened. A muscle jumped in his cheek. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Tell me, Jack. Because right now, I'm thinking you brought me here because I look like your dead wife. I'm thinking every kind thing you've done, every dollar you've spent, every time you've looked at me." Her voice cracked. "I'm thinking none of it was for me." He finally looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed, like he hadn't slept. "At first," he said slowly, "maybe," when she flinched like he'd hit her. "But that's not—" "Don't." She held up her hand. "Don't explain it. Don't make it sound better than it is. Ruth, did you even see me up on that block?" The question tore out of her, ragged and raw. "Or were you just seeing her the whole time?" He was silent. The silence lasted too long. God. And she laughed, a broken sound, sharp as glass. I actually started to believe. She couldn't finish. Couldn't say what she'd started to believe. Because saying it would make it real, and making it real would mean admitting how much it hurt. "I saw you," he said quietly. "Did you? I saw you holding your head up. I saw you not begging. I saw you standing there like you still had something left even though they'd taken everything." His voice dropped. "Sarah did that at the end. When the pain was worse, she wouldn't look away. She wouldn't give up." Ruth felt the tears coming and forced them back. She would not cry in front of him. Would not give him that. "So I am her," she said flatly. "To you, I'm just a replacement. A stand-in for a ghost." "No." "Then what am I, Jack?" She was on her feet now, her whole body shaking. "What am I to you? 'Cause I thought—" She bit down on the words. "I don't know what I thought. I'm an idiot. I should have known better." She turned toward the door. "Ruth, wait. I'm done waiting." She didn't look back. "That's all I've ever done. Wait for men to tell me what I am to them. Wait for it to get better. Wait for the other shoe to drop." Her hand found the doorframe, gripped it. "I'm tired of waiting." She walked through the house, grabbed her bag, the same small bag she'd arrived with. Didn't bother packing the few things she'd accumulated. They weren't hers anyway. Nothing here was hers. The front door slammed behind her. The road stretched out in front of her, pale dirt dissolving into gray sky. Ruth walked. She didn't know where she was going. Into town, maybe, or past it, or nowhere at all. Her feet moved without her permission, carrying her away from the ranch, away from the windmill, away from the man who had saved her, for all the wrong reasons. The wind picked up. It carried dust and the smell of rain, though no drops fell yet. The clouds above churned like something alive. Dark bellies swollen with water they refused to release. She walked until the ranch disappeared behind her, until there was nothing but scrubland and saguaro and the empty howl of approaching storm. Then her legs gave out. She didn't fall, just stopped, her body refusing to go further. She sank down at the side of the road, her back against a boulder still warm from yesterday's sun, and stared at the sky. The stars wouldn't come tonight. Too many clouds. But she remembered them from other nights. Brutal in their brightness, indifferent in their beauty. Millions of them, burning, and not a single one caring whether she lived or died. "You're nothing. You've always been nothing." The voice in her head sounded like her husband, like her father before him, like every man who'd ever looked at her and seen something to use, something to trade, something to discard when it stopped being useful. She'd thought Jack was different. She'd been wrong. But were you? The question surfaced unbidden. She pushed it away. "He told you the truth." He didn't have to. He could have kept lying. She didn't want to think about that. Didn't want to think about the look on his face when she'd walked out, the devastation, the guilt, the something else she couldn't name and didn't want to examine. Instead, she reached into her pocket. The bus ticket fragment was still there. Charred edge, faded ink, Albuquerque. She held it in her palm. Such a small thing, such a heavy thing. Reminds you that you can leave. She could. She could walk to town, find someone going east, start over somewhere new, again. Another town, another name, another version of herself that might finally get it right. But she was so tired of starting over, so tired of running, so tired of being the woman who left, or the woman who stayed too long, or the woman who never knew which choice was the right one until it was too late. The first drops of rain hit her face, cold, shocking, sharp as needles. She didn't move. Headlights on the road. Ruth heard the engine before she saw the truck, a low rumble cutting through the wind. She thought about standing, about hiding, about pretending she was fine. She didn't have the energy for any of it. The truck slowed, stopped, a door opened and closed. Ruth? Tomas's voice. Not Jack's. She didn't know if she was relieved or disappointed. He crouched beside her, rain already plastering his hair to his forehead. Jesus, you're soaked. I noticed. Come on, let's get you back. I'm not going back. Then let's get you somewhere dry. He didn't argue, didn't push, just offered his hand. You can figure the rest out when you're not sitting in a monsoon. She looked at his hand. Brown skin, calloused palm, dirt under the fingernails. An honest hand. A hand that had never taken anything from her. She took it. He drove her back to the ranch. She was too tired to protest, and he was smart enough not to give her a choice. The house was lit up, every window glowing. Jack stood on the porch, soaked to the bone, like he'd been out in the rain, looking for her. When the truck pulled up, he came down the steps. Ruth saw his face in the headlights, haggard, hollow, older than he'd looked that morning. Tomas helped her out of the truck. Found her on the East Road. She's okay. I can speak for myself, Ruth said. Then speak. Tomas stepped back, hands raised. I'm going inside. Ellie's got coffee on. He looked between them, something unreadable in his eyes. Work it out or don't, but do it before you both catch pneumonia. He went inside. The screen door banged shut. Ruth and Jack stood in the rain, 3 feet apart, the water running down their faces like tears neither of them would admit to. I'm sorry. His voice was barely audible over the storm. I should have told you, from the start. Yeah, you should have. I didn't. He stopped, started again. I didn't mean to hurt you. I know. Do you? She looked at him. Really looked, past the guilt, past the grief. Past the ghost of a woman she'd never met but had been competing with since the moment she'd stepped off that auction block. I know you didn't mean to, she said slowly, but you did. And I don't know how to. Her voice broke. I don't know if I can trust anything you've said, anything you've done. Because maybe it was for me and maybe it was for her, and I can't tell the difference anymore. The rain fell harder, lightning split the sky somewhere to the west. It was both, he said quietly. At first, I won't lie about that. When I saw you up there, I saw her. I saw what I couldn't save. He swallowed hard. But then I brought you home, and you were you. Not her, you, the way you fight. The way you don't trust anything good. The way you held that damn bus ticket like it was a lifeline and a punishment all at once. He took a step toward her. She didn't step back. I didn't save you for you at first, he said. But I want to now. I want to do right by who you are, not who you remind me of. Ruth felt something crack inside her chest, something that had been holding on too tight for too long. How do I know that's true? You don't. His eyes held hers. All I can do is show you, every day, for as long as you let me. She didn't answer. The rain fell. The wind howled. The windmill spun somewhere in the dark, creaking its endless song. I need time, she said finally. I know. I need to figure out if I can. She shook her head. I don't know what I need. That's okay. And he didn't reach for her, didn't try to close the distance. Just stood there, letting the rain wash over him, waiting. Take all the time you want. I ain't going anywhere. She nodded, once, then walked past him, up the steps, through the door. Ellie was in the kitchen with a pot of coffee and 2 dry towels. She didn't say a word, just handed Ruth a towel and pointed to the chair by the stove. Ruth sat, wrapped the towel around her shoulders. Let the warmth seep into her bones. Outside, through the window, she could see Jack still standing in the rain. He didn't come inside for a long time. She stayed in her room for 3 days, and Jack didn't knock once. The storm broke that first night. Hours of rain hammering the roof like fists, lightning turning the room white, thunder shaking the walls until she felt it in her teeth. She lay in bed and listened to the world tear itself apart, and something in her was grateful for it. The violence outside matched the violence inside. It made sense. By morning, the storm had passed. The land steamed in the early sun, every surface washed clean, every color brighter than it had any right to be. Ruth watched through her window as the world remade itself. She didn't go out. Ellie left food outside her door. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, plates covered with cloth napkins, still warm. Ruth ate mechanically, not tasting anything, then set the empty plates back in the hallway. She never saw who collected them. She heard the sounds of the ranch continuing without her. Tomas's voice calling to the horses, the truck starting and stopping, cattle lowing in the distance, the windmill turning, always turning, its creak softer now after the rain, and Jack's boots on the porch at night, sitting out there alone in the dark. She knew because she listened for them, hating herself for listening, unable to stop. He never came to her door. She didn't know if that was kindness or cowardice. Maybe both. On the second day, she took out the bus ticket, sat on the edge of the bed with it in her palm, studying it like it held answers. The charred edge had softened with handling, the paper gone gray and fragile. Greyhound lines, one way, and beneath that, barely visible, Albuquerque. Her cousin Marie lived there, or had 3 years ago. They'd lost touch after Ruth's mother died. Grief had a way of severing things, and Ruth had been too proud to reach out, too ashamed to admit how bad things had gotten with Dale. Dale. She hadn't thought his name in weeks. Her husband. The man she'd married at 22, believing every promise he made, ignoring every warning sign. He'd been beautiful. That was the thing people didn't understand about men like him. They were beautiful, and they knew it, and they used it like a weapon. Dark hair, easy smile, hands that could be gentle when he wanted something. He'd wanted her, for a while. Then he'd wanted her silence, her patience, her willingness to pretend everything was fine when the money disappeared and the creditors called and the promises turned to ash. She'd given him all of it. Every last piece of herself handed over bit by bit until there was nothing left but a woman standing on an auction block in a torn dress, wondering how she'd gotten there. But you know how you got there. She did. That was the worst part. She'd had a choice. The ticket proved it. One moment, 14 months ago, when she could have walked away, could have packed a bag and climbed on that bus and started over. Instead, she'd stood at the stove in their cramped kitchen, the ticket in her hand, and told herself she was being dramatic. Told herself things would get better. Told herself that leaving would mean admitting she'd made a mistake, and she wasn't ready to admit that. So she'd held the ticket over the flame and watched it burn, and she'd stayed, and Dale had died, and she'd inherited his ruin. You chose this. The thought was acid. She tried to push it away. You could have left, and you didn't. You stayed because you were scared, because you were proud, because you thought love meant suffering through the worst of someone, but that wasn't love. She knew that now. Love didn't make you smaller. Love didn't take and take until there was nothing left. Love was... She stopped. Love was a door that locked from the inside. Love was 3 places set at a table. Love was standing in the rain, waiting, not pushing, not demanding, just waiting. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs. He lied to you, the voice in her head insisted. He saw her in you. He saved you for a ghost. But had he? Or had he saved her because something in him recognized something in her? 2 broken people, both haunted, both carrying the weight of choices they couldn't unmake. I didn't save you for you at first, but I want to now. She'd heard the words. She just didn't know if she believed them. On the 3rd day, she opened her door. The house was quiet. Late afternoon light slanted through the windows, turning the dust motes to gold. She walked down the hallway, her footsteps loud in the silence. The kitchen was empty, but a pot of coffee sat on the stove, still warm. Ellie had been here recently. Ruth poured herself a cup, wrapped her hands around it, breathed in the bitter steam. Through the window, she could see Jack. He was out by the cattle pen, mending a section of fence that the storm had damaged, working alone. His shirt was dark with sweat, his movements slow and deliberate. She watched him for a long time. He didn't look toward the house. Didn't act like he knew she was there. Just worked. Post by post, wire by wire, putting the broken things back together. She thought about her husband, how he'd talked a good game, but never fixed anything. How the promises had piled up like unpaid bills, worthless paper, representing debts that would never be settled. Jack wasn't like that. Jack didn't promise. He just did. Fed her, gave her a room with a lock, told her the truth even when it damned him, stood in the rain, and asked for nothing except the chance to prove himself. But he saw her in you, maybe. At first. But people were allowed to change, weren't they? People were allowed to start wrong and end up somewhere different. She'd started wrong too. Started by burning a ticket and staying with a man who didn't deserve her loyalty. Started by giving up on herself long before anyone else did. If she could change, if she could learn to stop running, stop waiting, stop believing that kindness always came with a price, then maybe Jack could too. Maybe they both could. The sun was setting when she finally went outside. The sky had turned that particular shade of orange that only came after a storm. Vivid, almost violent, like the world was on fire and celebrating it. Ruth stood on the porch and let the color wash over her. Jack had stopped working. He stood by the fence, his tools on the ground, watching the sunset. She walked toward him. He heard her coming. She saw his shoulders tense, then deliberately relax, but he didn't turn around, just waited. The way he'd been waiting for 3 days. She stopped beside him. Not close, but not far either, within arm's reach. Pretty, she said. Yeah. His voice was rough from disuse. Storm washes the dust out of the air, makes the colors brighter. I didn't know that. Now you do. They stood in silence. The sun sank lower. The orange deepened to red, then purple, then the first pale stars. I'm not forgiving you. she said finally. Not yet. I don't know if I can. I know. I'm not saying I trust you either. Okay. I'm just, she struggled for words. I'm just saying I'm still here. That's all I've got right now. Jack turned to look at her. His face was lined with exhaustion, with worry, with something that might have been hope. That's enough, he said. That's more than enough. The stars came out one by one. The windmill turned against the darkening sky. Ruth didn't go back inside for a long time. The storm broke the same day Ruth walked out of her room. Not the weather, that had passed days ago. This storm came in the shape of a cream-colored Cadillac rolling up the drive for the second time, dust rising behind it like a warning. Ruth was on the porch when she saw it, her coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. Jack. And he came around the side of the house, wire in hand, and stopped when he saw the car. His jaw set hard. Get inside. No. He looked at her. She looked back. I'm done hiding, she said. Whatever this is, I'm facing it. Something shifted in his expression, not quite a smile, but close. He nodded once. All right then. Crenshaw stepped out of the Cadillac with the easy grace of a man who'd never been told no. He wore the same cream-colored suit, the same silver hair slicked back, the same smile that didn't reach his eyes. But this time he wasn't alone. Two men climbed out after him. Big men, ranch hands by the look of them, with the kind of faces that suggested they were paid not to ask questions. Jack, Crenshaw spread his hands. I was hoping we could avoid this. Avoid what? Unpleasantness. Crenshaw walked toward the porch, his hired men flanking him. See, I've been doing some thinking. $300 was generous. Too generous, really, given the circumstances. Jack didn't move. We settled the debt. I brought you the money. You brought me a payment, but debts have a way of growing, don't they? Crenshaw stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. His eyes slid to Ruth, especially when the collateral is so valuable. Ruth felt her stomach turn. The old fear rose up, the fear she'd carried for months, the fear of being nothing more than a line item on a ledger, a body to be bought and sold. But underneath the fear, something else stirred. Anger, hot and clean and righteous. I'm not collateral, she said. I'm not property, and I sure as hell ain't yours. Crenshaw's smile widened. The law says different, sweetheart. Don't call me that. The contract was clear. Labor in exchange for debt. If the debt isn't satisfied, the debt is satisfied. Jack's voice cut through like a blade. I paid you $300. You signed the receipt. Receipts can be misplaced. Crenshaw shrugged. These things happen. Then I'll pay you again. I don't want your money, Jack. Crenshaw's eyes glittered. Not anymore. The silence stretched. The two hired men shifted their weight, hands near their belts. What do you want? Ruth asked. Crenshaw looked at her. Really looked. The way a man looks at a horse he's considering buying. I want what I'm owed, one way or another. He smiled. You can come willingly, or my boys here can help you along. Either way, you're coming back to town. We'll sort out the particulars there. Ruth's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs to hide it. She ain't going anywhere. Jack stepped forward, putting himself between Ruth and Crenshaw. His voice was low, dangerous, nothing like the quiet man she'd come to know. You touch her, you set one foot on this porch, and I swear to God... You'll what, shoot me? Crenshaw laughed. You're not that kind of man, Jack. Never have been. That's your problem. Too soft, too decent. He spat the last word like a curse. Men like you don't win. Men like you just watch, while men like me take what we want. The hired men moved closer. One of them reached for Ruth's arm. Don't. Jack's voice cracked like a whip. I'm warning you. The man hesitated, looked at Crenshaw. Take her, Crenshaw said. The hand closed around Ruth's wrist, and then Jack did something she didn't expect. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out an envelope, held it up so Crenshaw could see. What's that? Crenshaw frowned. Let her go and I'll show you. A beat. The grip on Ruth's wrist loosened but didn't release. Let her go. The hired man looked at Crenshaw again. Crenshaw nodded, curiosity getting the better of him. The hand dropped. Ruth rubbed her wrist, her heart pounding. Jack stepped down from the porch, walked toward Crenshaw, the envelope extended. This is the deed to my North 40. 40 acres of prime grazing land, water rights included. He pushed the envelope into Crenshaw's chest. It's worth more than any debt she could ever owe, and it's hers now. Crenshaw took the envelope, opened it. His eyes scanned the document inside. You signed over land to her? This morning, notarized and witnessed. Tomas drove me into town at dawn. Jack's voice was flat, emotionless. She's a property owner now, Crenshaw. She owns land in this county. You can't sell a landowner into labor for debt. Check your own laws. Crenshaw's face went red. You can't just... I just did. This land has been in your family for 3 generations. Now it's hers. Jack didn't blink. So take your boys and get off my property. Unless you want me to call Sheriff Ellis and explain how you tried to kidnap a legal landowner in broad daylight. The silence was absolute. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Crenshaw's jaw worked. His hands crumpled the edges of the envelope, then forced themselves to relax. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yeah, it is. Jack stepped back. Don't come back here, Dale. Ever. Crenshaw left. The Cadillac rolled away slow, deliberate, like a wounded animal preserving its dignity. Ruth watched until it disappeared over the rise, until the dust settled, until she was sure, absolutely sure, that it wasn't coming back. Then her knees buckled. Jack caught her. His hands were steady on her arms, holding her upright, and she let him, just for a moment, just until the world stopped spinning. Easy, he said. You're okay. It's over. Is it? Yeah. His voice was rough. It's over. She pulled back, stood on her own, looked at him. You gave me your land. 40 acres. He shrugged like it was nothing, like he hadn't just carved out a piece of his family's legacy and handed it to a woman he'd known for a month. North pasture, good grass, good water. You can run cattle on it, or sell it, or... Jack. He stopped. Why? The question hung between them. He looked away, toward the mountains, toward the windmill, turning against the pale sky. Because it ain't mine to keep, he said finally. Because you needed something that was yours. Something nobody could take from you. You could have just what? He turned back to her. Paid Crenshaw again? He would have kept coming back. Men like him always do. This way you're safe, legal, free. But your land is just land. His voice cracked on the last word, giving lie to the claim. It don't mean nothing if... He stopped, swallowed. It don't mean nothing compared to... He couldn't finish. Ruth saw him struggling, saw the words caught somewhere between his chest and his throat, and she understood. Compared to you, he couldn't say it. Maybe didn't even know it yet, not fully. But she heard it anyway. She took the envelope from his hand. He'd taken it back from Crenshaw. She hadn't noticed when. And now she held it. The deed. 40 acres of Arizona dirt with her name on it. This is worth more than $300, she said. Probably. I could sell it, leave, never look back. You could. She studied his face, the lines around his eyes, the gray at his temples, the set of his jaw. A man who'd given up something that mattered because he thought she mattered more. Why ain't you asking me to stay? Because that ain't how it works. He met her eyes. You stay or you go. Your choice. Nobody else's. Not mine, not Crenshaw's, not anyone's. But you want me to stay? It wasn't a question. She saw the answer in the way his breath caught, the way his hands curled at his sides, the way he looked at her like she was the first real thing he'd seen in 8 years. What I want don't matter, he said. It matters to me. Silence. The wind moved through the scrub. The windmill creaked, soft and steady like a heartbeat. Yeah, he said quietly. I want you to stay. Ruth looked down at the deed, her name in black ink. Ruth Delacroix, a piece of land, a piece of something solid and real and hers. She could leave. She could sell the 40 acres and buy a bus ticket to anywhere. Not Albuquerque, not back, but forward. Somewhere new, somewhere clean. But she thought about Ellie's 3 places at the table. She thought about Tomas laughing at the rooster. She thought about coffee on the porch and fence posts sunk into hard ground and the way the sunset looked after a storm. She thought about a man who'd given her a door that locked from the inside and never once tried to open it. You gave me this so I could leave, she said slowly. Yeah. And you're not asking me to stay. No. But you want me to? I told you. I know what you told me. She folded the deed, slipped it into her pocket. Now I'm telling you something. He waited. She'd never seen a man wait so hard. I ain't leaving. She stepped toward him, closing the distance. Not because I owe you. Not because I ain't got nowhere else to go, but because... She stopped. The words were hard to find. She'd never been good at this. At saying the soft things, the true things, the things that mattered. Because this is the first place anyone ever let me choose, she said. And I'm choosing to stay. Jack let out a breath. His whole body seemed to release, tension draining away like water soaking into dry ground. Okay, he said. Okay? Yeah, a ghost of a smile. Okay. They stood there in the afternoon light, the porch behind them, the land stretching out in every direction. Ruth felt the deed in her pocket, the weight of it, the promise. She wasn't free because he'd saved her. She was free because he'd let her go. And that made all the difference. The morning after the storm, the world smelled like it had been washed clean, and Ruth set 4 places at the table. She was up before Ellie, before Jack, before even the rooster started his daily campaign of terror. The kitchen was gray with pre-dawn light, the stove still warm from last night's embers. She moved quietly, pulling plates from the cabinet, cups from the shelf, laying them out on the worn wooden surface, one for Ellie, one for Henry, because some rituals mattered, even for ghosts, one for Jack, one for herself. She stepped back, looked at what she'd made. 4 places, 4 lives, 4 people choosing to sit together in the light. Well, look at that. Ruth turned. Ellie stood in the doorway, wrapped in a faded housecoat, her white hair loose around her shoulders. She looked older in the morning light, and softer, the sharp edges worn down by sleep. "Coffee's almost ready," Ruth said. "Sit." Using my own words against me again. Seemed to work the first time. Ellie laughed, a dry, quiet sound, like wind through dead grass. But there was warmth in it. She sat down in her chair, the one she'd sat in for 40 years, and wrapped her hands around the cup Ruth set before her. "You're staying." It wasn't a question. "I'm staying." Ellie nodded slowly, sipped her coffee, didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. Jack came in as the sun broke over the mountains. He stopped in the doorway when he saw the table. 4 places. His eyes moved from the plates to Ruth, and something crossed his face, something raw and unguarded, gone before she could name it. "Mornin'," she said. "Mornin'." He sat down, in his chair, the one across from hers. Ellie was already eating, her attention fixed on her eggs like they required her full concentration. Ruth poured Jack coffee, set it in front of him. Their fingers didn't touch, but the space between them felt different now, charged, possible. "Thank you," he said. "Don't mention it." They ate in silence. Good silence. The kind that didn't need filling. After breakfast, Ruth walked out to the fire pit. It was a circle of stones behind the barn, blackened from years of burning brush and branding fires. Jack used it in the fall, Tomas had told her, when the dead wood piled up and needed clearing. She stood at the edge of it now, the morning sun warm on her back, and reached into her pocket. The bus ticket fragment, she'd carried it for so long. 14 months of shame and regret and what if, folded into a scrap of charred paper, no bigger than her palm. Greyhound lines, one way, Albuquerque. She'd burned it once before, held it over the stove, and watched it curl, and told herself she was doing the right thing. She'd been wrong. But this time she wasn't burning it to stay trapped. She was burning it to stay free. She dropped it into the pit, pulled a match from her pocket. She'd taken it from the kitchen, planning this without letting herself think too hard about it, and struck it against the stone. The flame caught, the paper blackened, curled, turned to ash. She watched until there was nothing left. "Ruth." She turned. Jack was standing a few yards away, his hat in his hands, his face uncertain. "Saw you come out here," he said. "Didn't mean to interrupt." "You didn't." He walked closer, looked at the fire pit, at the thin trail of smoke still rising. "The ticket?" "Yeah." He nodded. Didn't ask why, didn't need to. They stood together in the quiet morning, the land stretching out around them. His land, her land now too, 40 acres of scrub and sky that belonged to her. "I've been thinking," she said. "About what?" "About why I stayed, before, with Dale." She took a breath. "I told myself it was love. Told myself, that's what you do. You stay, you fight, you try to make it work. But it wasn't love. It was fear. Fear of being alone, fear of admitting I was wrong." Jack listened. The way he always listened, without interrupting, without judging, without trying to fix. "This is different," she said. "You're different." "How?" She turned to face him fully. The sun was behind her, lighting up the edges of his hair, the lines of his face. "You gave me the door," she said. "From the first day, the lock on the inside. The ticket you told me to keep, the land." She shook her head. "You kept giving me ways out, and I kept expecting the catch, kept waiting for you to close the door. I wasn't gonna—" "I know." She smiled. Small, fragile, real. "I know that now." The wind moved through the scrub. The windmill turned in the distance, its creak soft and steady. "I didn't stay 'cause you saved me," she said. Jack went still. "I stayed 'cause you let me go." The words hung in the air, simple, true, the realest thing she'd ever said. Jack's eyes were bright. He blinked, looked away, looked back. "Ruth, you don't have to say anything." She stepped toward him, close enough to touch, though she didn't. "Not yet. I just needed you to know. I'm not here because I owe you. I'm not here because I've got nowhere else to go. I'm here because I chose it. Because you made sure I could choose." He swallowed hard. His hand came up, hesitated, then settled gently on her cheek. His palm was rough and warm and real. "I'm glad," he said. His voice was thick. "I'm real glad you stayed." She leaned into his touch. "Just slightly, just enough. Me too." They walked back to the house together, not holding hands, not yet, but close. Shoulder to shoulder, their shadows merging on the sunlit ground. Ellie was on the porch, shelling peas into a bowl. She looked up as they approached, and something in her face softened. The closest thing to approval Ruth had ever seen from her. "Tomas is coming for lunch," Ellie said. "Told him there'd be stew." "I'll help," Ruth said. "You better. I ain't shelling all these peas myself." Ruth sat down beside her, took a handful of pods, started working. Jack watched them for a moment, the two women, side by side, doing the small work that held a life together. Then he went to the barn, and Ruth heard him talking to the horses, his voice low and steady. The windmill turned, the sun climbed higher, and somewhere in the distance, General the Rooster crowed his daily declaration of war. Ruth smiled. She was home,